Welcome to Have You Seen This? The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten visual media. All discussions will be spoiler heavy. You have been warned.
Welcome to Have You Seen This? It's Jen.
And Tim.
And we have a guest this week. One of our favorite guests. She's beautiful and smart, and she has a new channel on YouTube called Hyenas and Gin with some really interesting video essays. I just watched the one on Full Metal Alchemist, and, I'm not even an anime person, and it's a really dope video. So check them out. It's Emma. Thanks for coming back on, Emma.
Hi, thanks for having me back. Yay. Kind of, given the material.
Yeah. If only we could meet under better circumstances.
I know. I blame myself, though, because I know I was always trying to, schmooze my way onto your podcast. And I was always like, well, if you ever want to talk Ralph Bakshi, I would be down. And the monkey's paw, it curled.
It's true. You had suggested this movie a while back, and then I thought, hey, we need an end of the month free episode, and everyone's heard of this fucking movie. I don't know how many people have actually watched it. But Emma, do you want to tell us what the fuck we're talking about?
Yes, we are talking about Ralph Bakshi's Cool World. It is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, written by a 13-year-old boy who said, I can do that better.
Turns out he can't.
It is, no.
Yeah, so, God, where to start with
let
this
me describe
movie?
it. Yeah, Emma has a way of describing it. I would say this is the movie that ended my childhood. We each had a strong reaction to it, I think.
Now, I had not actually seen this movie until last night. But
oh God, we deflowered you.
Yeah,
Claudius, make sure she doesn't die a virgin.
You need a Sharpie virgin on your forehead.
And I'll never be the same again. The scales have fallen from my eyes.
Yeah,
but,
this movie ruins lives.
It's obviously indicative that we're just so bummed out having to talk about Cool World. Now, as I mentioned, I had not actually seen this movie until last night, but Tim, the way that you put it, I really want to hear your story about young Tim seeing this movie.
I hate this movie just on a personal level. I think that the thing that we've talked about, offline is that it's not a terrible movie. It's not a disaster. Mm-hmm. I think that the thing that Jen and I agreed on is that it's mostly, more than anything, it's a waste of your time. But for me, being a 14-year-old kid, I'm super into Tiny Toons. I'm into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That should be the primo demographic for a movie like this.
Right? Yeah. I was super into cartoons. As a kid, and a tween. There's a. Not just Tiny Toons, there's a Toon role-playing game. I was able to, corral my friends into coming over and playing that once.
At least you have friends.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my thing. And then, of course, I'm like, hey, another movie about, cartoons. I love cartoons. Let's, put this on. It's going to be, something wild and wacky and interesting, but just it just there's nothing there, anything that is appealing or interesting or fun or innovative about animation is absolutely absent from this fucking movie. And that's I hate it on a personal level because it just it took all the things that I love and just I wouldn't even say that it shat on them. It just is, I don't know, it's whatever, cartoons, what are you going to do? Just anything that I loved about animation, just this is the antithesis of that. It's just so boring and awful. I fucking hate it.
That's understandable going off the movie that I watched last night, which, as you said, is not like awful. The experience of watching Cool World was not what I expected, which was to just be, cringing in my seat the entire time, just feeling really just unpleasant feelings, the feelings that you have when a movie has gone like just really wrong. But it was just so workmanlike, and admittedly I'm not an expert on Bakshi, but it was not what I expected from a filmmaker like Bakshi. And Emma, I think via text you had mentioned how unlike a Bakshi film it actually is.
It is. Like, Bakshi films are very, like, love him or hate him, he has a style. And he's very kind of self-indulgent. And he'll just, like, stop the fucking movie. He'll be like, okay, now we're gonna have rotoscoping. Lots of rotoscoping of Nazis fighting dwarves. Yeah, more rotoscoping, just like that. And Cool World doesn't have that. There's like little things I see from him. There's like some kind of fun kind of visual gags that are a little like kind of like, oh, I can see kind of where like, Bakshi's kind of influenced there. I'm sure we'll go into this a little bit because there's one thing I love being on your podcast, Jen. You always kind of do the research. You understand the assignment.
Once a nerd, always a nerd.
Yeah, and I guess when he agreed to make it, he had a completely different concept for what the movie was going to be, and he was sort of strong-armed, and other people took over and stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely a case of studio interference, and I'm completely the opposite of a Bakshi stan. Like, I know people really love his work. Tim, I think your feelings are similar to mine. Emma, you sound like you've seen maybe a little more of his work and maybe would be more of an apologist for him. But the other night I watched 50% of Heavy Traffic. And yes, I was stoned, but I'll say this, it did draw me in. And again, this is not as a fan or even someone who like appreciates animation but isn't like, oh my God, squash and stretch. Oh my God, I'm going to come, It drew me into like a very weird, gritty, dysfunctional world that was, I have to say, kind of interesting. I mean, it's fucked up, and he's definitely, I guess it sounds hacked to say it, but it's like, well, he's not PC, but like he's not. Like, this is a guy who, grew up in...
Whether or not he's PC is the least of his problems.
Right. But, it's because, like, Heavy Traffic is like, it's grotty New York City. It's very much of that milieu. It's like, there's a whole sequence with a trans person being beaten. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. Hey, New York. What are you going to do?
Hard R N-word, like the whole thing. But you're like, this is what he grew up in, and he's putting his youth on the screen. It's like, okay, this is definitely is
right,
singular. Yeah, and it is his style and his alone. There's very little of him in the finished product of Cool World.
Well, I mean, I didn't see Heavy Traffic, but I did see Wizards when I was younger. Again, to his credit, my dad was trying to give me a proper pop culture film education. He's the reason that I've seen like Dune and Eraserhead and movies of that sort. But then he also rented Wizards, and when we got to the end of it, we're just like, what the fuck was that trash? Like, I know, Emma, you mentioned the rotoscoping, but I just can't get past how lazy and ugly Bakshi's rotoscoping is. I understand that like it's important to use like reference, and to Disney does that, like they draw off of models for all their animation, but it just seems like, hey, is there a way that like we can maybe do this for cheaper by not having to actually draw people? We can just like trace over film and then have that be like quote unquote animation. Like,
oh yeah, and that's like kind of like, to me, like watching it, that's like a staple of his work, where he either has these kind of like I mean, he worked on Mighty Mouse, almost like Mighty Mouse-esque, but kind of weird cartoonish characters, and or just the laziest rotoscoping you've seen in your motherfucking life.
There's just like no shading to it. Yeah, it's just like, oh, this is a person, so give them just kind of that like beige pink tone, just it's flat, and just everything it's just one outline around them, and just like put at least like pretend to put some effort into this. And I think like that's probably the thing that I'm just as a child fan of animation, what I find so offensive about his work, just like I think on a technical level, is that it's so like empty. It's so workmanlike. It's so slipshod. I don't have enough like adjectives to describe how much I despise the man's work.
Yeah, and the thing about animation is, we've talked about a couple of the giants of feature animation before in the show. Like we're talking about Bakshi, and before we had talked about Richard Williams. And I feel like there should be a happy medium between the two, because with Bakshi you might get very lazy, rushed animation, all rotoscoped. I keep thinking of his version of Lord of the Rings, which just is one of the worst looking movies I've ever seen.
Oh, bad.
I mean, they did it. I know that it was a money issue, but just watching it is like, come the fuck on. Like the Balrog is made out of boxes or some shit. This is ridiculous. And
I can't. I can't restate enough my disappointment at Wizards. Not just like the production, but also the like story arc and just the characters. Fuck, I hate that movie.
Right, and I'm not that familiar with Wizards. I think I watched like part of it at your place once, and I had the same reaction, like, what the fuck is this? But the point I was going to make is, if you kind of take two extremes, which is Ralph Bakshi and Richard Williams, I feel like there should be a happy medium between the two, where Bakshi you get like
the cobbler,
with Bakshi you get like the lazy rushed rotoscoping, and then with Richard Williams you get stunning, like 2 minutes of stunning animation in about 10 years.
It's just this endless set piece.
Yeah.
I watched that documentary about Thief and the Cobbler. I forgot what it's called off the top of my head.
Oh, Persistence of Vision, which is a very fascinating documentary, but it might make you hate Richard Williams.
That's my thing. I came away hating him because I was like, no, like everyone's like, oh, this guy's so good. I'm like, no, fuck this guy. He's just a small business tyrant. I'm glad Disney stole his movie.
Yeah, because, they finished it.
It's just such an overly ambitious like dick. And also like I guess here's my thing, like I understand like the importance of animation and what's to be said and stuff, like like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like that swinging lamp, and just it's not necessary, but it's just you watch that and the shade going on and off Roger Rabbit because the lamp is swinging and all that shit, and things like that. But like I'm also like, I don't know, but I also feel like you need a story.
Yes. Yeah, like that's
like, and he doesn't. It's like, oh, look, the thief, and you went through, and the patches moved with him, and I'm like, okay, but like, what are his struggles in life? What does he want versus what does he need?
Yeah,
the thing that what's the climax?
Yeah, I think the thing that I came away from that is that, yes, just these interminable set pieces where it's like, look, I'm animating every one of these hundreds of of just barely perceptible lines to make this whole thing work, and I'm like, yes, but I'm not entertained by it.
Yeah,
like that's good that on a technical level you're able to do this, but yeah, Emma, like you're saying, it's like, why do I care?
Yeah, which is why he was an incredibly prolific commercial animator. He turned out dozens, maybe hundreds of commercial projects for clients, and I think that was because he didn't have the final say on when it was going to be finished, and he couldn't just kick the can down the road the way that he did not only on Thief and the Cobbler, but another movie that we've talked about in the program, Raggedy Ann and Andy, A Musical Adventure. Both features were taken away from him. And jumping off of that, to get back to the ostensible director of the movie that we're talking about, Ralph Bakshi also kind of had this movie taken out of his hands, and I feel like it was probably a number of different factors, and I am absolutely not going to go to bat for the studio in this case because, look what they hath wrought. They did blindside him with a new script apparently on the first day of production, which is probably why it the product does not resemble in any way like the story that he originally pitched to them.
Yeah, the screenwriter can test that, but then it becomes kind of a he said, she said.
Yeah, he said.
The thing, too, about the script, though, is, like, in terms of, I mean, there's a lot of problems with Cool World, but the story feels edited. There's all these things that kind of pop up at the end and characters and stuff, and you're like, what? Which, I don't know. And I think that's weird because objectively, this could have been, I don't know if Cool World could have ever been a good movie. I mean, what's the plot? Like I said this on Twitter. It's an isekai, which, if you're not a weeb like me, it's a plot where a loser falls into a magical world where an anime babe wants to fuck him, you know? And that's the plot of Cool World. A guy goes to a magical world and he has an anime waifu and he's not allowed to fuck his waifu. You could have had a story with it. I don't know if it would have been good or whatever, but there was just 50 fucking things going on. And then there's like Brad Pitt's story where like, that's the interesting story. Me and my partner are watching it, and the first live action scene with him coming back from the war and his mom getting killed in a motorcycle accident is pretty well done. You're like engaged. Yeah, and it's the only good part of the movie. You're like, oh, what's going to happen to this guy?
No animation.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to this guy.
Yeah, it's funny. Severely curtailed. Other than it just being like, I'd rather live in the cartoon world, even though he doesn't really seem to like it there much either.
Yeah, and it's also really not clear what exactly, maybe apart from Hollywood, played by Kim Basinger, and Gabriel Byrne's character, the cartoonist Jack Deebs, it's like, you know, they want to fuck, like that's their motivation pretty much. But the problem is that like those character traits are like pretty well outlined, but it's like, what exactly are the rules of this world again? And the barrier between the cool world and, you know, our world full of noids or, you know, non-animated people.
Yeah, and the thing...
It could have been called Nopes. Noipes. Now I'm sad because it would have been a good acronym. Noipes.
The thing about the Hollywood character, too, I think that given how much of the film was cut down by the studio, I mean, we assume, and how much the story changed, the question does come up, who is this film for? And I think the film is just because it's not for, you know, Ralph Bakshi anymore because, you know, he didn't get his vision. It is for just the general notion of a horny cartoonist. Like if you're a horny cartoonist, you'd want to make a Hollywood character, to jerk off to, because I mean, from my understanding of it, just animators just like 201 are just like notoriously endlessly horny.
Well, Tim, I was going to say the phrase "horny cartoonist" is redundant. They're all horny.
Yeah.
They are literally all sick fucks.
Right.
But that's also my thing too. Watching it is, despite the fact, like I said, the plot, which is a guy wants to fuck his anime waifu, it's an oddly unhorny film. It reminds me like Felix Biederman's jokes about like what boomers think sexy is, you know?
Oh yeah,
like it's not at all horny. Like, and it should be. It should be like, here's the thing. Like, go back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I don't know. I feel like this is like I keep feeling we're referencing the good movie and the crappy movie, but and that's aimed at a family audience. But Jessica Rabbit is very horny, and she's done like very intentionally like horny. It's kind of delightful to watch, you know.
Yeah.
And this is not horny, and it could have been. It could, you know, because who the fuck cares? They could have been an R rating, you know. We could have seen, you know, Tim, you know, Kim Basinger's like, you know, anime titties.
Yeah,
and it's oddly not. It's not horny at all, and I'm kind of mad.
That's like, the thing, because Ralph Bakshi came to them with pretty much like a hard R animated film. Roger Rabbit was a massive hit, and but
with
it
a lot
was
of work
still...
put into it, which is another thing that differentiates the two.
Well, yeah, like 100%. Roger Rabbit was a massive hit, but it was, I mean, also I'll say that it's a family movie because, like, yes, like families can watch it. My mom and I just had a really...
Children can be traumatized by it. It's a family movie.
My mom and I both had a very unpleasant experience seeing it in the theater. Like, neither of us liked it very much. I think tonally we found it, like, really upsetting. At an older age, I'm going to be like, no, you know what? That's fine. Like, go ahead, upset your audience. Like, that's actually cool when people do that. But, like as a kid, it's like, ugh, this movie makes me feel weird. But
well, it's got more or less the same kind of convoluted story as L.A. Confidential. It just, has more cartoons in it.
Yeah, it's an animated Chinatown.
Yeah.
Which, like it or hate it, Roger Rabbit is a complete, like, well done artistic statement. The thing with Cool World is that it was supposed to be adult animation. Like, no, we're going to make something for grown-ups, and it's going to be crazy and sexy. And
yeah, but it's just like puerile.
Yeah, and so I really think that the studio lost their nerve. They were like, how are we going to market a hard R animated movie? I don't think that
step one, you make a hard R animated movie. But...
Right, and I don't
just figure it out from there.
Yeah.
I don't.
The right people get it. the right freaks and weirdos.
Yeah. It was all those. It was all the people going into Blockbuster Video and being like, "Oh, Evil Toons, what's this? Let's rent this."
Or hell, there's a market for the heavy metal movie.
Right.
That's been a cult favorite for decades.
And that's like I said, and there we go, going back to like horny adult movies. It is. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but you can watch it
it's
and
amusing,
get something out of it. You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Because the thing about heavy metal is like I feel like the early 80s were hornier than the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know if it was a post-AIDS epidemic thing, or just like studios or the money people being really nervous about what they were putting out into the mass culture because they didn't want much pushback. But the 80s were kind of an era of like heavy metal and like gross out teen comedies, things like that. And then by the time you get to Cool World in 1992, there's no desire to really be risk taking, at least not in in a feature context. Now, keep in mind, 1991 was the debut of Ren and Stimpy on Nickelodeon. So there was...
Yeah, you can't say that there wasn't a market for, gross out adult cartoons.
But that's the thing. Ren and Stimpy came out on Nickelodeon. Like, not Nick at Night.
Yeah.
Nickelodeon, the kids network. And boy, oh boy, did they get a lot of pushback for doing that show. But that was a great show. Because...
Yeah, The Simpsons would have existed at this time, too.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So, the audience was out there. It's just studios just don't want to roll the dice on anything that is a risk. They're already terrified. They're pouring...
Especially not with animation.
Yes.
And that's something like I noticed, which is even now, and like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know where the 90s is. I'm old gen. I'm like, the 90s happened like 5 years ago, right? No, it's been like about 30 years since Cool World came out. And Western animation studios still really want to play it safe. So it's all this shit. It's always like a PG Pixar movie, but it's like an allegory for being asexual and having depression if you squint,
Yeah, someone made the point, it's like all these Pixar movies, like all these are all about like death and like just these heavy issues.
Yeah, but it's
there's a little more wiggle room for like what you see on TV. I finished up Castlevania on Netflix, which is pulpy, but it's kind of fun and grotesque, and has some naughty sex scenes. And then there's all the sad adult cartoon shows about like someone on Twitter was like all these cartoon shows about having anxiety in San Francisco.
Yeah, so there's the cartoon about the depressed horse. There's the cartoon about the anxious birds. And then you get stuff like...
There's a mad scientist with a personality disorder.
Yeah, there you go. And then you get, on Netflix you have stuff like Big Mouth, which is a show that I will defend because it actually is funny. But, that really comes from like Family Guy opening the door to like, oh yeah, we can do like really disgusting outre shit, but like in a very contained environment, which is like TV or streaming animation.
Yeah, but to make it as like a movie, that's still a no-no. Like in the West, like animated movies have to be like PG and like, you know, everything's like really soft, and it's like a bunch of like normal actors with, you know, and so people will be like, wow, I don't know who the fuck's popular now. I don't even know who actors are. Sorry, I'm trying to think.
I just want to yell Minecraft.
I don't know. Yeah, it'll be like, I don't know, some I don't even know what actors are, man. It's been a weird year. I'm like dropping the ball on my
Jason
my improv.
Is that a name?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oscar Isaac is the
yes.
voice of this donkey.
Cool.
Oh, but we like said it. Yeah, but we said it in Guatemala. You know, to be like, you know, to appeal to other audiences, to show like, you know, cultural diversity, even though if you look at the script and the production, everyone is like a fucking white guy.
It's a palette swap,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's really
It's
true.
all window dressing.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it goes back to something which Mike Stoklasa pointed out years ago in the Plinkett Star Wars reviews. Like, people got mad at him for his take on race in the Star Wars prequels, but he was pretty much right. Like, this wasn't
I'm just gonna say it, not a lot of black people like Star Wars.
like, you know, this multicultural casting is not being done out of some like outpouring of sympathy for the plight of people of color. It's a cynical
box
cash
that hasn't
grab.
been checked. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of the end result of, you know, a lot of social media campaigns and stuff like that, you know, like your Oscars So White and stuff like that, they quite correctly have pointed out how white Hollywood really is, but it's like, okay, we're going to give some plum roles to some extremely well-known actors of color. We're going to make like we're going to have a black Mr. Darcy, you know, or whatever in Bridgerton, but nothing about the environment of Hollywood, either socially or in terms of labor, is going to fundamentally change.
Right. And the other thing too that I noticed in fandom, because, you know, I've been in fandom a long time too, is that, you know, there's a while where it's like, you know, the you know, the powers that be, you know, woke up and they're like, oh, women have a lot of money that we are not getting. We need to appeal to them more.
I hear they can have their own bank accounts now.
Yeah. What is the world coming to?
Yeah.
We need to empty those bank accounts.
Now, to bring it back to Cool World and to go back to something
Do we have
Emma
to?
mentioned.
Let's keep talking about how Hollywood won't take real risks in an old animated feature.
This one is like Astro Zombies, in which we'll spend like half an hour talking around the movie because we're like,
just anything but. Yeah,
what the fuck do we say? But
can we talk about like Watership Down or When the Wind Blows or Grave of the Butterflies?
Ooh, let's talk about
Fireflies?
Belladonna of Sadness.
Yeah, like you can do good adult animation.
You can, but like I said, it's you can, and it's possible, but studios are scared.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. They're all fucking cowards.
Well, yeah, like it takes.
Can I do my Mr. Plinkett thing?
You do it.
It's okay. All right. It's okay. I'm a coward too. That's my favorite one of his.
You gotta whisper it, because you're deeply ashamed.
The word is.
I just got excited to say it.
Yeah.
The word is tishi, or disappointed in the cooking of the duck meat.
I love 10-year-old jokes.
To go back to something which Emma said about this movie being intended as a quote-unquote horny movie, but just not making it, it's interesting to me how there's obviously a direct line from the Warner Brothers and Tex Avery type cartoons of the 40s.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Cool
I
World.
watched a great documentary about Tex Avery. And yeah, like that whole like Wolf Whistle thing and something else that I forgot. It's just like, yeah, we owe a debt to Tex Avery as a horny cartoonist. Like, good for him.
Yeah, and so to that end, they're literally horny wolves in this movie, but as Emma pointed out to me over text, like, it's just like a shitty cycle of wolves twerking.
Yeah.
It looks terrible.
It is, like, they go to the club, and that's the thing, I guess, which is like, in my head, I'm like, okay, if this guy's sucked into an animated world, and it's called Cool World, and it should be crazy and bombastic and just like a visual overload. And they have no budget. So when he goes into the club for the first time, it is those Tex Avery, like, it's 2 frames. It's like that little, it's like that little drawing thing where you have one frame with the ball going up and one frame with the ball going down, back and forth. And
Was it like a loading animation?
Yeah, these little wolves doing a loading animation, and you're supposed to be like, wow, this is a crazy horny club. Also, the fact, and this is something like so glaringly obvious, is they have to like make a real world set for Brad Pitt and Gabriel. God, well, I can't. Sorry, I get so mad he doesn't pronounce his name the way it's spelled. It looks like Brine. It should be Brine. I'm mad. Anyway,
just call him Claudia Black.
Yes, Mr.
Right,
Claudia Black.
That one's for Tim.
So Mr. Claudia Black and Brad Pitt, anytime they're like kind of focused on Cool World, there's like a really shitty set that's been built. And the set looks like that rock the kids have to climb up in Nickelodeon Guts. It looks so bad.
Yeah, it's just, printed foam core.
Yes. It's
There
spray
were-
painted with neon for like it's a haunted house or something.
Yeah, and like there's neon in the background where like I remember, in the club specifically, there are 3 panels of all this like, wild neon, and I'm just looking, and I'm like, I know that they reuse those in some other scene. I'm not going to go back and look for it, but I know that like these are just like repurposed filler that they use for all the different Cool World shots.
Yeah, they have a lower budget than an episode of Legends of the Mayan Temple or whatever the fuck it was.
And I just remember too, by the way, that from that documentary about Tex Avery, which you should watch, and we'll link to it or whatever. The quote unquote other thing that I couldn't remember, his contribution to pop culture via animation, it was the phrase "What's up, Doc." That was the other thing that I couldn't remember.
Yeah, what's up, cock?
Yeah, exactly. So, that and, the horny wolf. Like, you can make interesting, engaging things with animation. So why the fuck didn't Cool World? And yeah, Emma, what you're saying about, Cool World has got to be like this crazy, like, out of control place. And the only way that Bakshi conveys that is he'll shoot a boring scene of 2 actors on a cut rate set with cardboard cutouts, as the scenery. But then he just, like, shits animation all over it, just to like it. Since we're borrowing better comics material, it's like Patton Oswalt's bit about doing punch up for animation, where it's like, hey, can you take our like boring, unfunny cartoon and like just write in some jokes that people, characters that you'll never see are just gonna shout off screen. Like, that's what Bakshi is doing to like try and infuse some kind of coolness into the Cool World scenes. But, like, it is just so, like, it's this meaningless, distracting chaos that it's non sequiturs of, like, cats being, like, crushed by safes falling from the sky, and, like, a mouse getting hit by a hammer.
And I was telling Jen the little crying bunny that Jen puts in anytime like a conservative is whining because Starbucks made him put a mask on. The little crying bunny shows up.
Oh yeah, the Ba Bunny.
It's the Ba Bunny, but it has no relevance. And I mean, maybe I'm being like too nitpicky to be like the wacky cartoon set pieces need to fit into the world, but it really does kind of feel like they're trying to show this crazy cartoon world, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And I guess the gag is like the little bunny like has crocodile tears or something, but is actually like bloodthirsty because the little bunny goes to the popo. But it goes too quickly. Like there's no real time to like laugh or be amused by it.
I mean, even
Yeah,
that like has.
The bunny gets ripped off in I think a dice game on the street, and then turns out to be a Karen, basically.
Yeah,
goes to
which I
the
mean,
cops and go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and that dice game is like a total non sequitur. Like we're introduced to this gang of 4 animated characters who I guess like you're just like, oh, I guess we're supposed to care about these people now. If they get more character development than fucking Holly does. Holly's like, I'm a vamp and I, want to be like Marilyn Monroe and I want to be real. All right, that's it. That's your character. But
Tim, be fair to Holly. She also dances a lot.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you get. I mean, not to damn with faint praise, but I mean, Zev is a better developed character from Lex than Holly, could ever aspire to be. And they're both like one-dimensional cheesecake. But this gang of these four animated characters, because there's like a gray baby, like just like this old baby, and like a monster, and
a gray
like this,
disabled baby.
Yeah,
representation matters.
That's great. Yeah,
and then I swear, like, that lipstick thing is just the trans woman from Heavy Traffic.
I think it's the it's been done better in Roger Rabbit. It's the man kind of character.
Right.
Yeah, just
there's nothing more funny than an ugly woman who might wish to have intimacy. Right. Am I right, fellas?
That is literally the funniest thing I can think of, and the most disgusting.
The most terrifying thing I can think of. But even that, like, that scene is. It contributes nothing to the plot, but at least it does have its own arc. Like, there are characters who undergo a change for whatever reason. The thing that I'm most offended by is all the, like, interstitial animation. Because it isn't just the scene of characters interacting. It is a scene of, like, an alley where the main characters leave in a car. The car clears the shot. We see a mouse get attacked by a cat. The cat gets a safe falls on the cat. Then someone else comes up and does something to the mouse, and then a safe falls on them. And then the cat gets up and then gets shot by a cannon, and it just goes on and on. And
yeah,
it's never
because
it's never related to. You're absolutely right, though, Tim. Which is like, it's never related to live action characters. We have to go back to Roger Rabbit again because why not? But there's those scenes where Eddie's walking around the set and he's bumping into, and walking through and around all these cartoons.
Yeah, you get there's some stakes to it. Yeah.
Yeah, but in these ones, you're absolutely correct. Where the two live action characters get in a car, and then we get an animated set piece where those characters aren't at all interacting with that world.
Yeah, it's just flat. It's like, here's just a bunch of animated shit that happens, and like, even me as a kid watching this, I'm like, something has to happen, guys. Like, you can't just shoot a cannon at a cat for no reason. Like, there's got to be a purpose here. Like, I'm a fucking kid and I know this.
Oh, come on, Tim. I absolutely know that you would shoot some kind of cartoon clown cannon at a cartoon cat.
It's so,
I would have a reason.
I also feel like they might be intentionally avoiding it because every single time a character interacts with a live action character, it's so bad.
It's dog shit. It looks terrible.
And I know, and going back, like, I get, like, Roger Rabbit went above and beyond, but, like, even little things, like the little like creepy goon baby will, like, poke at Gabriel Byrne, and they don't even have the decency to have some poor stagehand offset kind of pull on his shirt a little bit to make it look like it's going down.
Yeah. Oh, and that isn't to compound the badness of all of it. You talk about characters interacting with Gabriel Byrne because he's got that that desperate like crone like crawling all over him, and like she like goes down his shirt and like comes out his pants, and like that's bad enough on its own, but the editing of these scenes is the most infuriating part of this, because it is just edited without any sense of like continuity. It's just bam, bam, bam. Just like, here's the thing, here's another thing. But I'm like, what does all this add up to? It's a collection of just meaningless shots that don't have any like relevance or carry through of any of it. And like, it's what I find most infuriating trying to watch this, is trying to like make sense of it. Like, you're engaged as a viewer to be like, okay, tell me a story, and the movie just refuses to.
Yeah, and I feel like their hands were probably tied by a lack of budget, a lack of interest on the part of the studio. Not to let anybody off the hook here, because it is bad. But it does have a feeling of being rushed, of not a lot of artfulness being put into it, because, like, I don't know, man, like that's going to cost us a lot of green to make that sequence with Gabriel Byrne almost getting raped look better.
Right, and Bakshi did make the point, too, about, like, he's like, when I was working on Wizards, I was doing it for dirt cheap, and that meant that the studio wasn't, like, up my ass about budgets or anything.
Right.
And you see what that yields.
Yeah, and then with Bakshi already seeming like a guy who absolutely does not play well with others. You
Yeah.
just have a recipe
Yeah.
for disaster. And in some cases, a really eccentric talent can be reined in slightly by structure, such that a studio would give, but in this case, they just kind of squeeze the life out of the project. And I think that the only way in which the movie really shines, apart from the opening, which is really pretty well made and got my attention and interest in the story, but then as soon as the cartoons come in, the movie just slams right into the fucking ground. The opening is good, and the backgrounds in the Cool World are absolutely breathtaking. They're beautifully painted, like beautiful color
Very
palettes.
demonic.
Yeah.
They're incredible, and the animation that they pair with it just falls completely flat by comparison.
I had a question because I was thinking this rewatching it. Did either of you see Has Been Hotel a couple years ago?
I remember
Sorry,
the
no.
controversy around that show,
Yeah, what it was.
but
I don't know.
I never watched it.
I watched it. I feel like the controversy was like kind of like Tumblr, tender babies being sad.
Yeah,
it's not
it was.
perfect, but definitely it's kind of the similar thing. It was one episode animated by like one person, and it kind of has similar. In my head, I'm kind of like, Has Been Hotel is sort of what Cool World, like, if it had been relatively competent, would have been. It's definitely kind of aimed at a younger audience. It has a lot of a very clear Jonan, like, Vasquez kind of a Johnny homicidal maniac influence in the art and kind of the
Slightly.
kind of edgy, yeah, violent kind of humor, but kind of Has Been Hotels like these really crazy over the top kind of violent, intense, cartoonish, like the city. And like I said, I do not think at all it was influenced by Cool World, but I definitely kind of got like similar vibes in terms of, you're right, like kind of the dark, like kind of edgy architecture that goes on in the backgrounds, and the one thing that clearly somebody put some time into.
Yeah, and again, that probably was able to happen at least for a little while because, like you said, it was one person basically working on a thing.
Singular vision.
Well, you're calling your own shots. You don't have
Yeah.
somebody, tapping their watch or looking at a calendar or, withholding money from you for whatever reason. But, Cool World, you had a very, you had a really singular animator bringing a bizarre story to a studio, and it pretty much turned out about as well as you would expect. The original story for Cool World is, like Tim alluded to, kind of the origins of the script are a little murky.
Yeah,
and
because there are
there's-
like two earlier stories.
Yeah, because there's disagreement between the co-writer of the script and Bakshi. Now, Michael Grace, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but that's how I'll say it. He did an
The
interview,
writer
which
of Poltergeist.
yeah, thank you for cutting to the chase, Tim. I'll link the interview, but he did an interview. It's basically saying, Ralph Bakshi is a liar. Like it didn't happen that way. So you can, choose the narrative you want, I guess. But I guess they had their own. He and his co-writer had a story that was Cool World, and then Bakshi had this concept about a guy going to a cartoon universe and fathering some kind of horrible, like half cartoon, half human hybrid.
Right.
And very little of that survived on its way to the screen, obviously.
And now this raises two questions that are not important. One, if so in the movie, sex between humans and cartoons, I'm not going to use the movie's fucking parlance, is outlawed, by Brad Pitt for whatever reason. The reason being that if it was the earlier script, it's because you can have a half human, half cartoon baby, but it's like that just means that procreation between humans and cartoons is outlawed. It doesn't mean that you can't fuck with a condom or something, a cartoon condom, although that would probably be a sentient condom, and then that gets into a whole other weird area, but that's neither here nor there. But then in the movie of it is you should be able to have sex, just don't have kids with cartoons. But then in the movie, having sex with Holly makes her into a human, But then this also raises another question too. If Gabriel Byrne, like, because he's been palling around with this cop that is a spider, and like, if he has sex with a spider, does that become a real spider?
This is my pee because I thought he was a spider too, because he has like the big booty.
Yeah.
But the more I watch, I notice he has little antennas, and he only has like 4 little comedic arms he uses in little wacky annex. So he's actually like an insect.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought he was, yeah. Yeah, no, I like his design, honestly. It's one of the few things I like. He has kind of a fun design. He has little fun movements with his hands. He's voiced by Charlie Adler, who's done like a bazillion cartoons, so like he's well voiced.
Yeah, Maurice LaMarche is all over this one too.
I was going to say utility player Maurice LaMarche shows up in the credits a few times.
Okay, so he's not a spider, but still, I mean,
he's an
if he had sex with Gabriel Byrne or or whoever, like, does he turn into like a human insect or what?
Well, I think it's because the rules of this world are not really clear. Like, they don't really tell you what's going to be so disastrous. If I think if a human has sex with the Noid from Domino's Pizza, which would be weird.
Yeah. Do they come in 30 minutes or less? You get your money back.
Whoa! Tim is absolutely correct, though, which is like the rules are very poorly established, and half the time they're just written at the end, like, spoilers, but Brad Pitt dies, and his, like, Betty Boop girlfriend is like, wait a minute. I don't know. She has, like, a little Betty Boop voice. She's like, oh, if I hate the stupid, like, yeah, I hate the stupid muggle-ass, like, names, but whatever. She's basically, if a cartoon kills a human, the human can become a cartoon, which has never been established in the entire movie. And I'm not like, ding, I'm pedantic about this, but it just kind of feel like something you could have at least foreshadowed.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
bit.
It's definitely something which should have been set up earlier in the movie, because that's how fucking movies work. You set up and you pay off. You can't just like say stuff at the end and be like, actually it's this.
Yeah, none of the rules matter until like the point where it becomes an issue. Be like, oh right, yeah, by the way, I should have mentioned this. Like, okay.
Also, when Brad Pitt turns into a cartoon, he turns into the dumbest looking fucking cartoon I've ever seen.
I get pissed every single time. He should look like my anime boyfriend or some shit. You know
yeah,
what I
and
mean?
you just know
and they
that
give him little orphan Annie eyes, and I get so mad.
It's so fucking dumb, and you know that
no,
it's
you could probably go to Deviant. No, he should honestly look like more DeviantArt-esque. He should look like Brad Pitt, but he's like my persona, and he's a fox, but he has like neon rainbow fur and like a big purple phallus.
He should at least look like the main character from the Disney Robin Hood, because everybody wants to fuck that stupid fox. And you just know that the reason that design is so shitty is because everyone who fucking worked on this movie was like, oh yeah, I love drawing sexy girls. I just love animating sexy girls. And then when the point came when they were like, okay, draw like a really sexy male character, they just went,
okay, but I'm checking out at 5. Like, either way. Like,
yeah, like a sexy man. I've never heard of such a thing.
I'm thinking of that meme, and it's the character, and their eyebrows just suddenly narrow. No.
Yeah. No.
I will say this: the one, and I will say one thing that I did like about the animation in this is that Gabriel Byrne's character's daughter, niece, some chick whose
neighbor,
house she's crashing
yeah. The neighbor's daughter, which I've watched the movie I think it's 3 times now, like with this, and it never made sense. And I watched it now, and I was like, oh, they barely established this is like the neighbor's daughter.
Right,
it's so badly done.
Yeah, I have no idea who this woman is, but like she's younger and seems kind of naive, and I appreciate that they gave her little orphan Annie eyes.
Yes,
that was
her Toon Sona looked I guess Doodle Sona. Fuck this movie.
Right, yeah.
Doodle Sona is appropriate versus Brad Pitt, where you're absolutely correct, which is they've been just like drawing like Minerva Mink for like 50 fucking years. And then it's like, can you do that with a man? And they're just like, oh man.
That's the thing. And I distinctly remember an episode of Animaniacs where they had Minerva Mink do like the horny wolf thing for like a sexy squirrel or something like that. So they were a little bit more aware than the Cool World crew. But Man, I felt so sorry for Brad Pitt in this movie.
He is a little
killed his
baby.
career.
Not condescendingly or the character, just in terms of like, Brad Pitt's been in the the acting world now for a long time, and this was like, I think, his next movie after Thelma and Louise,
right?
And he looks like a baby. It's so unnerving to me because now he's kind of like rugged, handsome, but I'm just like, we're just little birthday boy showing up and talking like Benny from Fallout New Vegas.
Hey, I'm just a little birthday boy.
I'm just a little guy, just a little boy.
Don't
just
hit me with that clown hammer. Yeah, he's okay. Well, he's like 29 or 30. Obviously early in his career.
He has to be like 23 in this movie.
No, I think I looked it up and he was like around 30 years old. But actors don't age like you or me. They have unknown powers. But he's very young in this, and he seems so uncomfortable on the screen. Like, and it's because he's interacting with the ping pong ball and the stick or whatever. It looks like dog shit.
Bold of you to assume they even had something to figure out where his eye line was at, Jen.
That's true,
like
because it looks
putting
terrible.
his arm around like his wife or whatever, his girlfriend. But you can see right through that. You're just like, oh, there's Brad Pitt like pushing his like elbow up into the air on stage.
Yeah, it looks so stupid. They really tried though, and yeah, like his eyes are rarely in the correct place. He seems really uncomfortable with the process. I think it slightly prefigured what would happen to the actors on the Star Wars
Lord
prequels.
of the Rings, yeah. Like the editing again, I can't hammer on that enough because also like you talk about because they're trying to limit the amount of Brad Pitt interacting with the cartoons because it's so bad. But like there's a scene where he's walking around fucking someone's apartment, it doesn't matter, and like he like looks over like this one cardboard cutout at the back of the stage, and then it like cuts to like 3 flies playing a poker game or something, and then it cuts back to him. It's like, don't ever have any of these things interact, just have him look at something, cut to something somewhere else, and then back to Brad Pitt.
It's too bad because that's a little bit of a funny gag, is like a tiny housefly card game. But
whatever. Yeah, I can't get past the editing. It's so infuriating.
No, and it's a potentially funny cutaway, but it doesn't really work because nothing in this movie really works. It's all very hastily done. It doesn't really tie into the story or develop further the cool world itself. It's all just there.
Yeah, speaking of things that don't tie into the story, the spike that is established and then forgotten for 2 acts.
I don't know what the fuck it was supposed to do.
I don't know. Yeah, and they kind of, it's giving them too much credit to say that they put a lampshade on that, because even like that mad scientist at the end is like, hey, the spike does what it wants to. It has unknown powers. It's like, you can't just fucking hand wave that.
Here's what bugs me, which is when the little cartoon guy shows up. I forget if him. No, Brad Pitt says it's Brad Pitt's like, me and the little cartoon guy have been like trying to make sure no one gets a spike for ages now, and I'm like, that should be your movie. I don't care about Gabriel Byrne trying to like fuck his anime waifu. Like, I'm like, this story about like a World War II vet who like suffers a horrific loss and then goes into this like weird cartoon world and is kind of recruited to prevent like chaos from unleashing. That's probably a pretty proficient story, you know?
And
like,
and
I would watch that.
Yeah, and Gabriel Byrne's character isn't developed beyond just being a horny putz.
Right, he's in jail because he killed someone, but he's also a cartoonist, and there you go.
Yeah.
And the thing about what was it? The thing about like the cool world itself too, like it exists as a literal place that you can get to by the spike like tearing a hole across dimensions, or in Gabriel Byrne's case, you can just kind of go there accidentally and come back somehow. All right, I don't understand the rules of that.
Yeah,
like,
it's implied. Sorry, finish what you're saying, Tim.
No, but like the other thing too is that there isn't even any like metaphorical thing of this like being a fugue state of Brad Pitt's character, or like, you know, him going to his happy place or preferring to live in a fantasy world. There's no like metaphorical reading of it. It's just like, oh, I'd rather live in this literal cartoon world rather than the one I came from. It's so lazy and flat.
I feel like any animators or cartoonists who might have worked on this might have been a little uncomfortable about exploring that theme of, hey, like, I'm actually living my life in a world that's completely fictional and avoiding the real world.
It's a shame because that's an actual story.
Right.
No, and to the movie's smidgen credit, like, Brad Pitt does have a line where his trad Betty Boop waifu is like, don't go back there, or I forget if she no, that's it, she's mad he's going back there. And he does have regrets, and he's like, this world is terrible, like, that you can, when you die, it's for real. But going back, I feel like Brad Pitt should be the main character because his story is interesting, and clearly, like you said, like the topple of like, do I stay in this fun, crazy world with like, you know, awooga girls and, you know, little weird, you know,
right,
like diaper monsters and shit, you know, like, you know, or do I go back to this real world which is full of like pain and suffering and like irreversible loss? That's a story.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's an actual choice. It's that, you know, leaving, you know, childish things behind and, you know, accepting, you know, facing uncomfortable truths, or just, you know, living in a fantasy world forever.
Yeah, which
I guess, you know, that didn't resonate with anyone.
And then, you know, it appears to be a thing which Gabriel Byrne's character is quite happy to do with no resistance at the end of the movie.
He is such a reactive character, and I don't think necessarily reactive characters are bad, but like you said, I cannot tell you a single thing about him other than he's horny and he killed a man.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he had regrets about killing the guy, or if he's like, damn straight, I'd do it again. I don't know. They let him out of jail, so I imagine he did the Shawshank Redemption
right
thing,
yeah,
and got to peace out. But I don't know anything about him, and he goes into the world, and you think there's going to be this tension of will they, won't they, when Holly wants to fuck him. There's not. He fucks her immediately, and then she's like, let's go back to the real world, and he's like, okay. Like, he does nothing. He does nothing in this movie. Things are constantly happening to him, and he doesn't even really, I want to say he's reactive. He doesn't even react to them.
Well, yeah,
because
there. You know, it's somebody waving a piece of gaffer tape at him and being like, oh, no, look, over here. You get the face is going to be over here. Mr. Byrne.
Yeah, you talk about like women in comics being a plot device. Like Gabriel Byrne is a plot device. Like he's wallpaper in this.
Yeah, and it's funny what you say, Emma, about like you don't know if he's glad that he killed the guy or if, you know, remorseful or whatever.
Or even if it's
like,
important.
Yeah, and I feel like and because the movie originally was intended at some point to be a horror film, I feel like that dimension was something which maybe existed in an earlier draft or an earlier treatment, because like you know, everything that goes with like killing a partner who cheated on you, like that's fucking heavy shit, but there's nothing in the movie that's particularly heavy. So, you know, it's like, yeah, he's in jail for killed a guy or something.
Yeah, speaking of like the death with which that is handled, so Brad Pitt is the closest that we have to a developed character in this. And, you know, his job is to prevent, you know, Holly from getting this fucking spike. And that all happens at the top of a casino. And keep in mind, Holly's been like this, you know, femme fatale fantasy girl this whole time. And I guess she's supposed to be kind of the hero in this because she's aspirational. You know, she's on all the movie posters. She's the reason that this movie was written. Like, I mean, that I think we can agree on. So she goes. So she's climbing up to the top of the casino to get the spike, and you know Brad Pitt is on her trail, and she pushes him off the building,
Yeah.
She's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, like cold, like just ice cold, like doesn't get, it doesn't give a fuck, like sorry buddy, and like he fucking hits the ground and he dies in the real world. And you're right, Tim, that's the moment where you're like, oh my god, she's a fucking sociopath.
Right. Like I mean, you need to develop characters so that when they do stuff, you aren't just like floored by like, okay, I guess this is what they're like now.
And maybe you could have done a thing where, because Holly is a cartoon, she doesn't understand what it means to die in real life. Like she, for all we know, she could have assumed that like, well, I'm just going to push him off the building and like he'll do like a funny Wile E. Coyote bounce. But no, she just seems like a killer, a stone cold killer.
It doesn't matter to her whether he dies like a cartoon or a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on top of that too, like, yeah, did she know? Like, yeah, would it matter either way? Like,
but there's nothing to Holly besides, wanting to fuck and wanting to be real. And Emma mentioned the scene where she finally fucks Gabriel Byrne. I think I was like halfway through that scene before I was like, oh wait, they're actually doing it now.
Editing.
No, same thing.
Yeah,
same thing, because there's that gag where her little goons. I think they're actually are called the goons. So the members of the Something Awful Forum pay their
resemblance is stunning.
Pay their $20 and demand to watch. The joke, I guess, is they just want to watch because they're all little pervs, as the Something Awful goons are.
Exactly right. Like all cartoonists.
So much time. Yeah. We spend
like
so
all
much time with these
cartoonists,
characters.
Something Awful goons are all perverts.
Yep, and they have a little cute set piece where they hysterically like grab like garbage cans and boxes and like stack them up comedically high to be little sickos. Ha ha ha! Yes, while trying to watch Holly fuck. And yeah, but I had the same thing. I was like, oh, like, I didn't realize they were having sex, because they do that weird PG-13 thing where she like keeps her bra on during sex, which no human being has ever done in their fucking life.
Yeah,
I mean, like if it's in an airplane bathroom or
something.
something.
Yeah, if it's in an airplane or like a parking lot or something. But like I said, unless someone has a very specific fetish or like some sort of religious hang-ups, no human being is going into a bedroom with their partner and keeping their fucking bra on.
Well, and especially because like there's no way that Holly is going to keep her clothes on when she fucks Gabriel Byrne. I'm sorry. And
I want to see those anime titties.
Definitely.
I'm so upset. I got to see titties in heavy metal. How come I don't get to see the anime titties in Cool World?
Yeah, and our biggest cultural touchstone on the show too, like Lex. I mean, even Stanley's like seen Zev's titties, but she won't fuck him. But I mean, like Holly does want to fuck Gabriel Byrne, and she doesn't like. She isn't like, popping her tits out at him like at the slightest provocation.
Yeah, and that's
she's trying to get him to fuck her.
Yeah, and that's where, like, the gonzo underground cartoonist doesn't give a fuck sensibility collides with the major movie studio sensibility, where it's like, we can have...
It's gotta be it.
We can have her do a sexy dance, but you absolutely cannot have her disrobe. And so what you end up with is a scene where she's doing a lap dance to Gabriel Byrne and touching his bare chest, and it's like, okay, she's dancing. Oh, I guess she just had an orgasm.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recognize a woman's orgasm either.
Yeah, I mean, they don't want to upset the cartoon fans in the audience, but
right, yeah, those all wholesome Disney fans that came to see Cool World.
It's like those bronies would get really mad because someone would be like, Fluttershy is my waifu and we have sex, and they would like write up like a diatribe about how Fluttershy would never have sex before marriage. She's a pure
this was on
little
Something
mare.
Awful, or
I don't remember. It was like one of those things that got pasted around and copy pasted. But yeah, some brony was like, "Oh, I'm married to one of the ponies, and we fuck." And some other person got very indignant and was like, "No, she would never degrade herself like that."
Yeah, see, actual animation fans are so much more like depraved and opinionated than this movie was willing to be.
That's funny too, also because the guy who's like, yes, I'm married to a cartoon horse and we fuck, is more normal than the guy who's like, no, she doesn't have sex. You're disgusting. Bronies. Yeah,
I like to fuck my horse.
Oh God. Yeah, and funny thing about again, the ostensible director of this movie, Ralph Bakshi. I'm sure most of you know that early in his career, Bakshi did an animated version of Robert Crumb's character, Fritz the Cat. And there was some disagreement between the two eventually on, like, the treatment of...
Ralph Bakshi had a disagreement with another creator? No.
I know, but I repeat myself. Yeah.
Strange
like,
but true.
What Emma said, Crumb was so unhappy with the treatment of Fritz the Cat that he killed off the character in a comic. And there's an interview where he talks about how Bakshi is, he says something about how, like, I just don't like his repressed horniness, just implying that the guy is some kind of fucked up pervert. And I remember reading that and just thinking, man, when our Crumb says you're a creepy pervert, your life has gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah,
Jesus
you really need to,
Christ.
like, reevaluate. You need to be like SpongeBob, like, staring at his coffee and the Krusty Krab. Be like, I gotta reevaluate my life here.
Yeah. So, and there might be a lot where it might be that Bakshi is just really difficult to work with, and that has a lot to do with why the movie went south. I might give him a little bit of a pass in this one because, like, there are very few people who can fight a movie studio and win. And because, as Emma pointed out, the movie is really such a pale imitation of kind of the Bakshi vision, you almost can't necessarily blame the guy for a lot of it. I think you can blame him for a lot of the directing choices. I think there were a substantial amount of reshoots on this and, like, unusable footage and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm afraid to ask what the Bakshi vision is.
Heavy traffic?
Just rotoscope of Nazis marching in the street, and they're fighting, like, horny Tex Avery wolves.
Like,
frame.
cartoon gag.
What a beautiful tableau.
Cartoon gag domestic violence, like the Lockhorns if they were X-rated.
Probably a little more transphobia as well.
Yeah, something like that. And like I said before, I did get sucked in to Heavy Traffic despite not being a Bakshi fan. I might even finish the rest of the movie. I probably will be stoned. I don't think I'll be watching Cool World again.
You can make me watch that or Wizards, which sucks because I have, a genre friend who is into all this stuff, and he likes Ralph Bakshi, and just, like, I fucking don't want to bring it up around him. Like, I hate the man's work.
Emma, how many Bakshi films have you seen?
A good amount. My Bakshi origin story is before I got into anime. My little early teenage self was very intrigued with the idea of, like, adult-oriented animation. So, I watched Spawn on HBO, which I watched it a few years ago. It holds up surprisingly well, which is really cool.
Probably
I watched
better
Heavy
than
Metal,
the movie.
Of course. Oh, yeah. No, much better.
Aeon
much better.
Flux, The Max.
Yes, watch that.
Liquid Television.
Yes, The Max. God, I don't know. I need to reread it, but, like, loved The Max. Yeah, that shit. So, of course, I divulged into Ralph Bakshi. Like I said, like you all said, he has a vision. His stuff is, even if you don't like it, it's interesting to watch, sometimes. So I've watched a good amount of his things. I'm trying to think. So Wizards, Heavy Traffic, Fire and Ice, I feel like I'm missing one or like
American
a couple, I guess.
Pop.
Yes, and that is the one I will like sincerely like be like, no, it's good actually. That is the one I will like honestly like defend.
That's funny because I rented it once and could not finish it. But
No, and like it's here's my thing though about it. Like I will personally like defend it or be like why I like it, but on the other hand, it's also peak Bakshi. It's like I don't need a plot. I just need rotoscoping of people dancing the swing music, and I'm just like, wow, this is brilliant. You know?
yeah,
But
And I'm like-
there's aspects of it I like, but I don't think anyone else has to like it.
Right, and maybe it is good, but I mean, like I'm 0 for 2 with Bakshi, and at this point I'm like, I'm just wasting good time after bad, to go back and like maybe explore the rest of the guy's work. I mean, I did that with Von Trier's body of work because I'm on the fence about him, but at this point I'm just like, I don't know what I'm gonna get out of watching the best Ralph Bakshi movie.
yeah, and I did take a look at his most recent animated work, which is it's not feature length. It's I think a little less than half an hour, and it's called the Last Days of Coney Island. This was a project that I believe he kickstarted. It's on YouTube, so you can check it out. And I did actually like the aesthetic, which was kind of like I don't want to say Pollock, but like that kind of that era of painting. All of his really grotesque kind of twisted characters, and the same thing he does with dialogue, where he seems to record dialogue like almost at random and then animate to it, so you have these weird disjointed conversations. I think it's the kind of thing which would be fun to watch stoned. It's less than half an hour. It's not coherent. That's like a thing which you've said a lot about his movies. Like there doesn't seem to be story. I mean, okay, like maybe it's like a tone poem about Coney Island or something, but I didn't watch it and go like, wow, like I really underestimated this guy. Like this is a really a complete holistic work. It's like, no, it's like, all right, that's kind of a cool look. Like, good for you.
Yeah, it's like I get what you're saying. I don't care, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I like that you both say that because it's like, yeah, like you don't care, have to like it, but you get what he's, what he's going for. Cool World, you're just like, what?
Yeah, who is this even for?
Who's gonna pay for this?
Yeah.
It's not for, like, the studio didn't get what they want. Bakshi didn't get what he wanted. The writer didn't get what he wanted, because his name is on it. And yeah, so it's like, who's this movie even for?
It's not for grown-ups. It's not for kids. As we learned from Tim, it's not for teens.
Yeah. God. Still mad about it. Like 30 years later.
Yeah, and I don't even know, I don't, like when you get in deep into fandoms, you will run into stans, people who will apologize for even incredibly flawed or just plain bad work. But I don't know, does anybody spend any energy trying to defend Cool World, or is it indefensible?
More fools us, like, for doing an episode about it.
I had a coworker when I worked at Universal Studios who really liked it.
That's so
She
weird.
had done, but to be fair to her credit, she had done every single drug known to man and just liked things that were kind of like crazy and neon. And I asked her once and she said that's why she liked it. And going back to, like I said, me like an American Pop, it was like, I don't have to agree with you, but I respect where you're coming from.
Yeah, like in terms of something that you just kind of put on to experience while stoned, I mean, all right, if you have kind of like basic taste.
No, I don't. I mean, like I said, she was not to, like I said, not to go into like this girl. Like I worked with her and she was chill, but not like we had in-depth conversations or to really judge or critique her merit. But she didn't really strike me as someone who was super in-depth or interested in like kind of like, art or kind of indie TVs and stuff. And I highly, highly doubt she ever actually watched Cool World in like any state of sobriety,
Yeah, and sorry, Tim.
No, I was going to say, yeah, and as for me to weigh in, like, I know animation, I know what I like, I know what I like about animation, and Cool World doesn't have any of that in it.
Yeah,
That's it.
I would say, and since I'm always the one on the show who's like, well, let me think of something nice to say about it. I would say that the backgrounds are very well painted, and it's got kind of a banging soundtrack.
Okay, I will say that about the soundtrack. The soundtrack is great. It has a lot of great artists on it.
It's got Ministry.
Yeah, Ministry, which is unexpected to say the least. It's got, My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult, which, they also, were great on the Crow soundtrack. The Crow soundtrack being just like a perfect album. What's it? Electronic, the side project between Bernard Sumner from New Order and
Neil Tennant.
Neil Tennant from Pet Shop Boys.
I laughed when I saw
It's got
that.
Moby. Yeah.
I laughed when I saw the electronic song on the soundtrack because I was like, man, this could have been a really Tim movie, but they fumbled the ball on that.
Yeah, and a Tim movie is a pretty low bar too. I mean, Black Dog and Mad Dog Time, I guess, are the two touchstones for what qualifies as a Tim movie. Wagons East. Almost Heroes.
Oh God, poor Gabriel Byrne. He was in this and Mad Dog Time.
Oh jeez, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was allowing him to be in these roles? He should just be Claudia Black's stand-in and then just be done with it.
What's funny is that we haven't even mentioned Kim Basinger.
Who?
I have the craziest story about her doing this movie. Jen, you might know this already, but going back to who this movie is for, Kim Basinger made it because she wanted to show it to children in hospitals.
Wow,
she thought it was going to be a fun
terminal cases.
That's a fucked thing to do to somebody who's in palliative care. I'm sorry, that's not a death with dignity, Kim. I mean,
Maybe this will finish him off.
She looks good. I remember a review where, and I don't remember if it was probably an LA Times review because that was what I read back in the day because I think Calendar was right next to the comics section. I recall a review where somebody said about Kim Basinger that she's just not as sexy as the cartoon Holly, which is kind of unfair, but also kind of true.
I thought that also, and but here's my thing: she's next to a cartoon.
Yeah,
the cartoon is the distilled sexiness.
Yeah, and it's no, she's not an unattractive person, but
she's beautiful.
But going back to watching Hollywood, who's drawn just like I said, she's your anime waifu. She's flawless, and now you're a 3-dimensional female.
Gross. She has knees and eyelids.
Yeah, and if this movie had been made 30 years later, as soon as Holly turned real, Gabriel Byrne would have been oh, disgusting. I'm not interested in 3D women. And he would probably be some kind of anime Nazi on Twitter.
He's the real reason he was in jail is because he stormed the Capitol January 6th.
I don't think any of those people are going to see the inside of a jail cell.
Not even Jay Johnston from Mr. Show.
Oh, yeah. Was he just on the lam this whole time?
Apparently. But,
can't get arrested in this town.
Kim Basinger is a very beautiful woman. She is game enough in this movie, trying to do, doing a little bit of comedy. She does a little bit of singing with hilariously Frank Sinatra Jr. She's fine, but, it's not like the material is doing her any favors. It's not like she has a chance to get real chemistry with her co-star. Gabriel Byrne just seems to be I don't fucking know, man. Just, draw whatever you want on me. I'm just collecting a paycheck. Brad Pitt looks really uncomfortable. Doesn't know where his eyes are supposed to go. It's just, I feel bad for the cast.
Yeah, it's just it's a waste of everyone's time, including ours and our listeners.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I would like to suggest that you all watch Liquid Television, though, because that shit is so sick.
Yes.
Yeah, watch Liquid Television. Listen to the Cool World soundtrack. I mean,
it's got David Bowie on it.
Yeah, if ever this was a movie to be heard
that was
and
actually
not
David
seen.
Bowie?
Yeah, that's David Bowie at the end.
Oh my god, I didn't know. I was oh, look at this movie. They have David Bowie knockoff. On the ending credits.
No, that was
Yeah.
David Bowie in his black tie, white noise phase. I think he had just married Iman.
Yeah, this is like nascent industrial music on here too. It's very
Yeah.
90s, but like it's a perfect encapsulation of that, like, Wax Trax kind of era. It's
Now-
really worth checking out. The movie sucks.
Speaking of industrial, before we close out,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you two, have either of you seen The Haunted World of El Super Bisto?
I've seen that.
I know. I have not. I know what you're talking about, but I never actually saw it.
Which leads me to wonder what Rob Zombie thinks of this movie.
Oh, Christ.
Is he on Twitter? Can we add him? Be like, excuse me, Mr. Zombie, sir. Have you seen Cool World?
Mr. Zombie,
Bobby.
when you are not slamming in the back of your Dragula, yeah, because I guess that movie. Tim and I tried watching that movie once, and
It is so dull.
it's really stupid. And I know
Yeah.
it was Rob Zombie's kind of stab at adult animation because it's got titties and Nazis in it. I guess that's what you do when you do grown-up animation. You put in Nazis and you put titties.
Right, yeah. Two things that are the most, outre for a 13-year-old.
They did it in The Wall, Gerald Scarf. They did it, they did it in Ralph Bakshi does it in all his movies. Yeah, so Nazis and titties. But, yeah, so if anybody knows what Rob Zombie thinks of Cool World, write in.
Yeah.
It probably didn't have enough titties for him.
Yeah, it didn't have any titties.
Ooh, what do you think Glenn Danzig thinks of Cool World?
Oh, I'm sure he aspires to that level of artistry.
Yeah, he's got it on the shelf with all of his werewolf books. Well, is there anything else that we... No, go ahead, Tim.
No, I just want to say Glenn Danzig is just I don't know. He's like a junior in high school. He never grew up. Bless the man.
And he makes movies like it. Is there anything else that we want to say about Cool World?
Don't
last
watch
thing
it.
Yeah.
You don't have to watch it. There's, like you said, there's Liquid Television. There's,
There's Ren and Stimpy.
There's Ren and Stimpy. There's anime. There's other Ralph Bakshi films if you are so inclined.
You know what?
No
You
one
can-
needs to watch Cool World.
You can go on YouTube right now and look up Heavy Traffic, and you'll spend a reasonably diverting hour and a half. Even I will admit that.
Yeah.
The only reason you need to watch Cool World is if your ADHD and or autism is giving you a hyperfixation on Brad Pitt and you're determined to watch every single movie he's been in. Other than that, you don't need to watch Cool World.
Yeah. There's Akira. There's Spike and Mike's fucking twisted animation. That's like that is like a giant compared to what we get from Cool World. And that's
Hell,
just like,
Beavis
here's
and
a collection
Butthead
of random
or King of the
Beavis
Hill.
and Butthead, King of the Hill, The Simpsons. You are you're like Simpsons on Tracy Ullman. You are spoiled for choice of better animation from this era.
Yeah, and if you need anime recommendations, just hit up Emma on Twitter, Hyenas and Gin.
Yes. I'll tell you the good animes. And the animes with problematic neoliberal themes.
That's exactly right. Check it out, Hyenas and Gin on YouTube. Video essays.
I had one more thing. Speaking of, if we can wedge us in, speaking
Yes,
of bad
Columbo?
editing. Yes. One last thing, Jennifer. The editing in this movie is just demonstrably terrible. The worst edit. It was a bad edit then, and it fucked me up since then, because there's a point where a new character is introduced, and I thought as a kid I must have just not been paying attention, but then 30 years later it fucking got me again. Gabriel Byrne turns into a superhero at one point. Blink and you fucking miss it.
Oh yeah.
We did not address that at all. And the reason you miss it is because the point where the movie lost me is Gabriel Byrne, he appears, with his jet black hair in a black sport coat behind a blackened sky for 6 fucking frames. He appears behind Holly. Snapping my fingers, I'm trying. Then he turns into an orange an orange spandex superhero with a different voice. That is a separate fucking character.
Yeah, and because I was like, oh, like, that's not Gabriel Byrne's voice. That's weird. And I got what had happened because, okay, here comes this superhero to save the day. But I was like, that's weird. They didn't do anything with him turning into the superhero or anything like that. Like, they didn't even... You know how they could have faked it? They could have had him walk into there could have been a cartoon phone booth on the roof of the hotel.
There could have been fucking anything.
And he could have walked in and then walked back out. And that actually would have been pretty funny.
Yeah, and
they do that thing, though, and it bugged me. They're like, he's going to be who he always wanted to be, a hero.
Yeah,
I'm like, this has never been established. He killed a man.
No, that's true. Because he's never been heroic. He's always just been like a horny dork who was like, hey, I'm out of jail. And who, by the way, like, really got back on his feet extremely quickly after being in jail for murder. Like, he had a fully furnished house to go to.
Yeah.
And they did that Patton Oswalt thing I was talking about earlier, where it is the mad scientist off screen being like, oh, he's fulfilling his destiny of becoming a hero, because that is not shown by his actions. It is not established. It's just like, look, we just need to dub this in to cover up this one plot hole.
It's kind of what they had John Candy do on the movie Hot to Trot. Like, they had a really stupid talking horse movie, and he basically ad-libbed all the dialogue himself.
Well, I guess if you don't have a funny movie, that's why you bring in a
and it worked really well.
I guess we need to cover that one then.
I mean, you had great lines like about Mr. Ed. You'd be moving your lips too if some stagehand was shoving a carrot up your butt.
Is that apocryphal, or has that been verified?
I do not know if the horse that played Mr. Ed was ever sodomized with a carrot.
All right, well, we'll answer that and then put that up on our Patreon.
Hey everyone, it's Jen again. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like that, why not check out our Patreon? We're at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. And for a pledge of as low as $2 a month, you get a whole 2 extra bonus episodes a month. So check us out there at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. Thanks again for listening, everyone.